citizens and civilians alike. This is your friendly bearded space Viking, Erik the Cat McKetten, and his equally friendly AI, Signy, here with another in a series of spaceflight instruction videos. Signy, say hello to the viewers.
Those losers? Why would I want to talk to people who waste their time watching video games?
Signy had too much mead last night. Today we are covering basic space flight using the joystick. This is based around a generic joystick and not one of the more expensive hands-on throttle and stick or HOTAS setups. As usual, I highly recommend you experiment with various controls. I'll be using the Aegis Gladius for all of my instructional videos. The Gladius has classic spaceship and airplane lines, a shape that all should be familiar with, and this should help in visualizing what our control inputs are doing to the ship itself. Alright, time to grab the stick and take to the stars. The first control is the basic pitch maneuver. By moving the stick on the Y-axis, or up and down, we move the nose of our ship up and down. To yaw, move the stick on the X-axis, left and right, and the nose of the ship moves left and right. Veterans of space and air combat simulations may find this disorienting, as they may be accustomed to having roll on the X-axis. You can rebind this if you desire. However, it is worth noting that in Star Citizen, yaw is often more important than roll in combat and maneuvering. The last of the basic maneuvers is the roll. The default binding for roll left and roll right is the twist axis, or if you don't have a twist axis, A and D respectively. Of course, this isn't atmospheric flight. This is space, and in space, we have more directions we can maneuver, what we call strafing. If you have played any first-person shooters, you are familiar with strafing. Strafing is sliding to the left, right, up, down, forward, and back. The thing is, strafing is extremely important in Star Citizen, not just for basic flight, but for combat as well. We achieve this with the default setup by using Q and E for strafe left and right, and R and F for up and down. It is worth noting that I often recommend swapping Q and E with A and D in the key bindings. If you do this, you need to swap for roll and strafe as well as for decoupled roll and decoupled strafe. However, all of this is moot if you can't get your ship to move. That's where the throttle comes into play. The throttle is controlled by either a slider or throttle wheel on the stick itself, or by using the W and S keys, W for forward and S for back. Double tapping those keys will set the throttle to 100% or 0% respectively. Okay, so we know the basics of traditional, atmospheric style flight in Star Citizen, but there is also a non-traditional flight mode. Also known as decoupled mode, this alternate flight mode is activated by pressing caps lock once. What decoupled mode does is separates or decouples the heading or direction our nose is pointed from the bearing or direction our ship is traveling. We can demonstrate this by accelerating in one direction until we are at top speed. Notice I am flying this direction at 220 meters per second. Next, I will press caps lock to decouple. As I turn, my ship, now in decoupled mode, continues traveling along the original bearing, regardless of where my nose is pointed. While I am in decoupled mode, I can change the direction of travel by using strafe keys, and W and S for strafe forwards and backwards. To exit decoupled mode, I press caps lock again. The ship's intelligent flight control system will then fire whatever thrusters necessary to push the ship in the direction we are currently facing, and thus returning us to an atmospheric style of flight. Before we end our basic coverage of the joystick controls, we should go over boost and space brake. Boost is essentially afterburners. Pressing the shift key, or button 7 on a joystick by default, will increase the energy output of whatever maneuvering thrusters are currently firing. For example, if I accelerate by holding down the W key and combine that with shift, I will reach full velocity much faster. Boost can also be used in conjunction with any other maneuver. Be aware that boost consumes fuel. Fuel is recharged over time, but if your fuel reaches 0, you will have little or no boost, and that can be the difference between life or death in a combat scenario. Space brake, or Newtonian brake, controlled by default by pressing and holding the spacebar, negates all current momentum, regardless of direction, without changing the throttle setting. Space brake is very useful for minute course corrections during the heat of battle and to prevent ramming other ships or crashing into asteroids. Furthermore, space brake can also be boosted. In the end, it is up to you to decide what control method you prefer and how you want them to be configured. If you are a stick pilot, I recommend looking into a dual stick setup, or a HOTAS, hands-on throttle and stick. There is also what is known as a HOMAS, hands-on mouse and stick, which many players find bridges the gap between mouse aiming and joystick control. I strongly urge you to study the controls, adjusting them as you see fit, and experimenting with the input methods. I also highly recommend you practice basic flight in free flight mode or on the race courses, and when you begin to feel comfortable with them, then take a step into Vandal Swarm to introduce yourself to combat. Once you feel comfortable with Vandal Swarm, it may be time to try out player versus player combat. I highly recommend the Squadron Battle game mode over Battle Royale. Having Wingman is far more useful than you could possibly imagine. So, this concludes our introductory lesson. I hope you found it useful in conjunction with the articles, and feel free to post questions on the articles or on the YouTube videos, or find me in my Twitch stream. Until next time, citizens, see you in the verse.